All right. Hello, everyone. This is Adam Small in the Denver area. It's June 11, 2025. And this video is going to go over setting up your new FrSKY Ethos-based radio, such as what I have here. I have the FrSKY X20 RS. I've had it since last year when it was released, and I love it. And we're also going to go over on how to set up this Vantac RF007 with my FrSKY radio. So basically, by the end of this video, everything's going to be set up except your helicopter. You're still going to have to set up the geometry on your helicopter, the rates and the PIDs, the motor and whatnot. And Bert Kammer has a great video on his YouTube channel on going over that process. And that's the same video I used, and it worked great. And I'm going to have a bunch of links at the bottom of this video, in the comments, or in the show info. Important links and documents that may help you throughout this process. So if you're new to Vantac and FrSKY radio, I know it's overwhelming, so hopefully this video helps. And as always, before you fly your model, definitely bench test it without any blades on. And there we go. Okay, so let's get started. The first process of the video, we're gonna basically download everything we need onto our transmitter and onto our computer. So the first website you want to go to is ethos.freesky-rc.com. So this is the Ethos website, and this is where we're going to download the desktop software. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. I have a Windows computer, so I'm going to click on Windows, and it's going to start the download process. So it's just going into my download folder right now. I already downloaded it, so I'm just going to close that download. Once it downloads, open up your download folder, and you should see Ethos Suite Windows 1.6.3. That's the most recent version as of June 11, 2025. So just double click on that. Now you may get a pop-up saying it's not a trusted application. So click on more info at the bottom and then click run anyway. And it will install your Ethos Suite on your desktop. Right here is my Ethos Suite icon after installation. Okay. So once that's installed, let's go ahead and open up our Ethos Suite. After the download and installation, I'm just going to maximize this window here. So this is our desktop software, how we're going to interface with our FrSKY Ethos-based radio. We can download LUAs onto our radio and firmwares to flash our receivers over the air, which is pretty slick. But most importantly, we want to make sure our FrSKY radios has the most updated firmware and RF module. I think RF means radio frequency module. So we need to make sure both those firmwares are up to date. Okay. So first things first, we're going to turn on our radio.
Welcome to Ethos. Throttle not idle. Switch warning. Motor not armed.
Okay, so my radio is on. And now I want to connect the radio to my desktop computer. And on my radio, I have a little flap back here on the top where I'm going to plug in my USB-C. Okay, so I have my radio plugged into the computer, and my transmitter's asking me what USB mode I want. We want Ethos Suite. Okay, then I just heard a little ding dong on my desktop. You can set your transmitter aside. Two files opened up automatically. Radio E file or folder. So you have a Radio E drive in your transmitter. I'm going to minimize that. We don't need it now. And then Flash D drive. And we're going to minimize that. We don't need that right now. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the Ethos Suite. And I'm going to click on radio information. Well, first thing, update news. I don't like pre-releases, so I turn pre-releases off. I'm going to click on radio information. It should auto-recognize your transmitter. So here's my radio information. Here's my transmitter. And it's saying my firmware, bootloader, and RF module are all up to date. So that's great, but yours may not be. So if it says out of date, we need to update your firmware. So to update the firmware on your transmitter, click on Ethos tab. And then here, I want to make sure I'm on stable version, not testing version. That's just me though. If you want to be a test pilot, you can use the testing version, but there may be bugs. So I make sure it's stable version, and then I just double check I'm on the most recent version here. So version 1.6.2, that's selected. Display language English, audio language English. I want to make sure this says write outdated components, which is what it defaults to. Write outdated components. And then you're just going to click this download button, and it's going to flash your radio, which is going to take several minutes. Okay? So once the flash is complete and you have the most up-to-date transmitter firmware, if you need to update your RF module, you're going to click on the most recent version, which is 3.0.2 as of today, and then you're going to click on flash module. And that happens automatically, and after a couple of minutes it should be flashed. Okay? Model manager, if you need to do a backup, so whenever you update your transmitter in the future, you want to back it up before actually flashing new firmwares on there, but I'm assuming you have a new radio. Okay, now we want to go to Download Center. So now what we want to do is download the receiver firmware that will be installed on your RF007. There's two types of RF007s. I have the twin version, and then there's the Archer Plus version. I'll show you how to do both, but let's start with my version. So we're going to click on receivers, twin series, and this is the one we want. TWR6FB if you have the twin series RF007. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to click on download, and it'll ask you what file you want to download it to. All right, I already downloaded it. It's in my download folder, and it's this one right here. It's a zip file, 3.0.2 twin 6 channel. Okay. Now, if you have the Archer Plus or the black Vantac RF007, you want to go to Access 2.4G series, Archer Plus series, Archer Plus R6FB, if you have the black RF007, and then you're going to click download. It's going to ask you to select a folder, and then it'll download on your computer. I don't use the flash because my radio is still plugged in right now. A lot of people have issues with that. So we're going to manually transfer those receiver firmwares onto our transmitter in the next couple steps. Okay, so once you download the Archer Plus R6FB, it'll be a zip file, and it should say 3.0.1 APRX. Okay. Awesome. So basically, we have our transmitter updated, the RF module updated, and we downloaded onto our computer the receiver firmwares that we're going to transfer to our RF007. There's really nothing else I need to do in the Ethos suite here. So I'm going to close the Ethos suite. Actually, let's eject our drives. So click on Ethos, and we're going to eject the drives. We just don't want to pull the USB cable out of our transmitter. We always want to eject the drive safely, and the Ethos software has an eject drive option right here, so I'm going to eject the drives for now. All right, next we're going to go back to our web browser, and we're going to open up rotorflight.org. I already have it open here. Here's the Rotorflight website. And we need to download software that's going to go onto our computer so we can interface with your RF007. All right, first thing I want to do is, like I mentioned before, I always like stable versions. So up here, I make sure it's on 2.2.0. This is a recent update. If there's release candidates, it will say an RC at the end of the number. I personally don't do release candidates because there may be bugs. So right now, I got the most stable version 2.2.0, and I'm going to go to download. And then we want to download the Rotorflight Configurator. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click on Rotorflight Release version 2.2.0. It's going to open up a new tab in GitHub, okay? And I'm going to scroll to the bottom. And now it depends on what kind of computer you have, whether it's Windows or Mac. You need to choose your proper installation software. I have a Windows 11 system on 64-bit, so I select Rotorflight Configurator Installer 2.2.0 x8664.exe. So Windows systems have .exe at the end. Macs will have .dmg at the end if you got a Mac. That'll install or download the configurator on your computer. And after the download, you want to install it. So right here, here's the Rotorflight Configurator 2.2.0. You're going to double click on that. You may get a pop-up saying it's an unrecognized program, so click on more info and select run anyway. Okay, once you install the Rotorflight Configurator, this is what the icon looks like. Okay, let's go back to the Rotorflight or the GitHub website. And now we want to do Rotorflight Blackbox. Now this is optional. Rotorflight Blackbox is a nice desktop software where you can download logs from your RF007 on your computer, and you're going to open it up in your Blackbox, and you can analyze what your PIDs are doing, what your vibrations are doing, which basically makes you tune a better helicopter. It's not necessary. I recently started doing it a couple weeks ago, and I'm still learning. But if you want to download Blackbox, click on Rotorflight Blackbox, and once again, for my computer, I selected Windows 64.exe, and then that's going to download the Blackbox on your computer, and then you can install it. So here's the Rotorflight Blackbox installer. Double click on that, and it will install the Blackbox installer or the Blackbox software on your desktop. And that's what the icon's going to look like on your desktop. All right, now we need to, we'll go back to the top of GitHub here. Now we need to download the Lua scripts for our FrSKY radio. Okay, Lua scripts, a quickie on what they are. It's basically an application, like an app that goes on your phone. It's an app that will go on your transmitter, and that's how we're going to interface and have telemetry and tune on the go through our transmitter. It's pretty slick. So Lua scripts for FrSKY radios. This is for non-touch FrSKY radios, such as the X14. I have a touch. If you have a touch screen, you can install both of these two Lua scripts. So this is for non-touch screen, which is a text-based app. This Lua suite is for touchscreen, and that has icons and cartoons you can click on your touchscreen. I install both because the Lua scripts for FrSKY Ethos has some more functionality and more tuning options than the touchscreen Lua suite. So let's click on Lua scripts. So here, this is the one we want for if you have a non-touch screen, or you can install it on your touch screen as well. If you want more functionality, it's not required. You're going to click on Rotorflight Lua Ethos 2.2.0.zip, and that's going to download on your computer. And this is what the folder is going to look like after the download. Rotorflight Lua-ET 2.2.0. All right, if you have a touchscreen, you want to download the Lua suite. And then you're going to click on Rotorflight Lua Ethos 2.2.0, and that's going to download the zip file on your computer. And this is what the zip file looks like after the download's complete. Rotorflight Lua-ET Ethos Suite 2.2.0. All right, I'm going to minimize this window. Okay, so we downloaded the Rotorflight configurator on our desktop. We downloaded the Luas that we'll need to transfer on our transmitter, which is in the next step. And optionally, I downloaded the Blackbox software, which provides better tuning. All right, now we're going to disconnect our radio from the computer. So I'm going to eject the drives through my computer. Actually, let me go back to the Ethos website. And I think I already ejected them earlier. I did. I mentioned that step before because we didn't need the transmitter connected. So basically, I'm going to unplug my transmitter from the computer. And then I'm going to turn it off.
Throttle not idle. Switch warning. Motor not armed. Motor not armed.
All right, now we're just going to turn it off. Okay, now we want to open up our computer in bootloader mode. Bootloader mode allows us to manually copy and paste files onto our transmitter or delete files from your transmitter. So you want to push and hold the power button and the middle button of the scroll wheel at the same time. And now we can see my transmitter's in bootloader mode. All right, now I'm going to set the transmitter aside and I'm going to plug it into the computer. Okay, now we need to transfer or copy and paste those Luas that we downloaded on our computer earlier, and then the receiver firmware, which will transfer over the air onto our receiver several steps from now. Okay, so those two files opened up automatically, radio E and flash drive D. So the first thing I want to do is I want to transfer or copy and paste or click and drag those Luas we downloaded earlier into our radio E folder. Specifically, I want to transfer those Luas into the scripts file. Now, if you don't have a scripts folder here, you're going to have to manually add one. So just right click and then new folder, and then you can name it scripts. Okay, this is what my scripts folder looks like. I have a lot of Luas in here because I fly airplanes too, and I have some airplane Luas. And you're gonna probably have a blank. Yours will probably be blank if this is a new radio for you. All right, so now we want to go to the folder where you downloaded the Luas on your desktop or your computer. So this is the touch suite Lua here. So let's open up that zip file. I'm going to double click on scripts, RF suite. So I just copy the folder labeled RF suite, and then you're going to paste it in your scripts folder in radio E. And this is what it's going to look like, RF suite. So copy and paste that, or you can click and drag it into your scripts folder on radio E. Now, if you have a touch base, or if you have a non-touch FrSKY radio, we want to click and transfer So here's the zip file for the non-touch Ethos FrSKY radios. We're going to open that up. RF2, that's what we want. So you can copy and paste it or click and drag it, and we're going to plop that into our scripts folder on Radio E. And it should look like that, RF2, in the scripts folder on Radio E. I installed both because, like I mentioned before, touch-based radios, you can have both. RF2 is text-based, and this is a touch screen applications with cartoons and icons. RF2 has some more functionality, so I installed both. Now, if you have a non-touch based Ethos radio, you're only going to install RF2, the text-based Lua. Okay, so now we got the Luas that are on the radio, and I'll show you what those look like later. So I'm going to go back to my downloads here. Now we want to transfer the receiver firmware into the flash drive D on our transmitter. So this is the zip folder for the Twin series RF007, and this is for the Archer Plus. I have the Twin version. So let me click on that zip file. I'm going to click on this folder here, and I'm going to copy and paste or click and drag TWR6FB 3.0.2.FrSKY. So I'm going to copy that. And then we want to go to our flash drive on our computer, because we're going to transfer that receiver firmware onto our transmitter to flash over the air in a later step. So make sure you got a folder labeled firmware. If you don't, manually add a new folder and title it firmware. So let's double click on firmware once you have it added. And then you can paste or click and drag that TWR6FB 3.0.2.FrSKY. Okay, if you have the Archer Plus series, it's kind of the same thing, but I'll show you what the firmware file looks like. So if you have the Archer Plus, the black RF007, this is the folder you downloaded earlier. You're going to click on 3.0.1 APRX, 6 channel, and Archer Plus R6FB. And here's the file you want to copy and paste or click and drag that, and you're going to transfer that or copy and paste it into your firmware folder on flash drive D. So here's the firmware folder. So you'd plop that, copy and paste it right down in here. I didn't do it because I have the Twin version. I have the red RF007. Okay, so now we have everything on the radio that we need. We got the Luas and we have that firmware, which will flash our receivers over the air a little bit later. So now I'm gonna go ahead and eject the drives because I don't need the transmitter connected anymore. So here's the eject drive icon here. I'm gonna eject flash drive D. And I want to eject radio E. Now I'm going to minimize this window. We can minimize Ethos Suite, minimize my web browser. And now we're going to open up the Rotorflight configurator. Oh, we don't need our transmitter on at this point. We're still in bootloader mode. As you can see here. So I'll just turn my transmitter off. To turn it off in bootloader mode, just push the power button. Oh, I'm sorry, my USB is still connected. So once you eject the drives, you can disconnect your USB. We're in bootloader mode, and I'm just going to turn my radio off. One push of the button. I don't need the transmitter right now. We'll set that up later when we set up a helicopter model. All right, we installed the Rotorflight configurator earlier, so let's open that up. maximize this window. Here's our desktop software to interact with Rotorflight. I'm going to connect my USB cable to the computer, and I'm going to break out my brand new Vantac RF007, and I'm going to put this on a OMP M7 that I have that's flying on another flybarless unit right now. So let's open this up, see what it looks like. It's a slick little unit, high quality. There it is in the packaging. I'll take that out. We have a bunch of cables, which you probably won't even need. And then we have that USB-C cord in there. I'm gonna put that aside. Nice looking unit, 2 antenna, lots of ports on the side. Don't freak out about these plugs here. I don't even use them, but nice, high quality unit. Okay, so we're gonna plug that USB cord into the top of the RF007. I'm gonna set the RF007 onto a flat surface. My workbench that I'm at right now is perfectly flat. I leveled it with a digital pitch gauge because I'm OCD. Because this pop-up is saying we need to calibrate our accelerometer. Okay, so I'm just going to close this tab here, and I'm going to go to Setup and Calibrate Accelerometer. Just make sure the RF007 is still and on a flat surface. It's pretty quick. It's calibrating. Calibration done. It says right there it's finished. Okay. I had no problem connecting my Rotorflight to my desktop. It recognized it. There was no problems with my drivers. All right, now we want to update this Rotorflight 007 to the most recent Rotorflight firmware. They're constantly evolving it. It's open source, constantly updating it and making it better. So I'm going to click on Update Firmware. Now, when I first did this on my first Vantac RF007, it wasn't detecting anything. I clicked on Detect here, and it wasn't detecting my unit. Basically, I didn't have the correct drivers or the right drivers on my computer. So what you need to do, if you can't connect to your Vantac on the update firmware page, you need to go to impulserc.com/pages-downloads. And you're going to download and install a driver fixer. And once I did that and clicked on update firmware and clicked on the detect here, it detected my unit. Okay, and I'm going to have that link in the at the bottom of this YouTube video. Okay, so all releases and snapshots, that's fine. Vantac RF007, because I auto detected it. I'm gonna hit this drop down menu here, and I want to be on the most stable version, so 4.5.0. These are all older versions, but as new versions come out in the future, they may have RC1, RC2. Those are the release candidates that may have bugs, so just user beware, use at your own risk. I like stable versions, so I selected 4.5.0, no reboot sequence off, full chip erase. If it's a new unit, not a big deal. But if you're updating your unit, you probably want to save the diff all file in your CLI on Rotorflight. Okay, but this is a new unit, so full chip erase is fine. But like I said, if you're updating a unit that has a model on it already, you probably want to save that model, the model settings. Manual baud rate I've deselected, that's what it defaults to. Now I'm going to load firmware online. It loaded the online firmware, and then I'm going to click flash firmware. It's erasing everything that's on my RF007 right now. And now it's flashing the RF007. And this may take several minutes. Okay, it says programming successful. All right, good job, everyone. And then let's connect to the unit just to see. As you can see, when we erased the chip, when we flashed the new firmware, we have to recalibrate the accelerometer. So I'm going to close this window, click on Setup, make sure the RF007 is on a flat surface and it's still, and I'm going to click on Calibrate Accelerometer. Okay, calibration's finished successfully. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect my RF007, which basically ejects the drives, and then you can unplug your RF007. Okay, now on to the fun part. We're going to program our transmitter so it's all set up for the RF007, including registering the RF007 and binding it to our transmitter. So we're going to turn my transmitter on.
Welcome to Ethos. Throttle not idle. Switch warning.
And you'll probably get these warnings. Just click OK. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the gear icon or select it. And we're going to go through all these icons in the system menu. File manager, we don't need to do anything with this right now, but this is how we're going to update the firmware on our RF007, whether it's Twin or Archer Plus later. Alerts, I didn't do anything here. Date and time, you can go in there and select the date and time and whether you want 12-hour or 24-hour. General, nothing really to do here, but you can explore. It's a new radio, or you may already be used to this radio. Battery, I didn't do anything there. Hardware, okay, so this is important. Anytime you get a new transmitter, you want to calibrate your left stick, your right stick, all your knobs, trim switches, sliders, and switches, and knobs, okay? And to do that, you're going to select Analogs Configuration, and it pops up a wizard, okay? I already calibrated mine, but you're basically going to follow the directions and click Calibrate, and it's going to run you through a little wizard to calibrate everything, okay? Nothing else I did on the hardware page. So let's go back to the system menu. Sticks, nothing to do there. Device configuration, nothing to do there. I'm going to go to the next page in the system menu. Info, nothing to do there. And then in the system menu, this is where you can see those LUAs that we transferred to our Radio E script folder earlier. And there's the touchscreen LUA and there's the text-based LUA. Like I said, I have a touchscreen, so I installed both because Rotorflight 2 has some more functionality, although I primarily use the touchscreen LUA. All right, let's go back to system. And this is our home screen. I'm going to select the little airplane symbol. That's going to take us to the model menu. I'm going to select model select. I want to add a new model, so I'll hit the plus symbol, create model, helicopter, forward arrow, fly barless, make sure that's selected, and then forward arrow. And then this is the standard FrSKY channel order assignment. So AETRP, channels 1 through 5. And that's what we want. That's what it defaulted to. Forward arrow. And then you can name your model. I'm going to put this Vantac RF007 on my OMP M7. Enter, forward arrow, done. We just created a model, but we have a few more things we need to do. So let's go back into the model menu, select the airplane symbol. Model select, that's what we just did. We created our model there. Edit model, nothing to really do here. It has everything we just entered. Flight modes, nothing. I didn't do anything with flight modes with the RF007. Mixes, okay, we're gonna do a lot of stuff here. So we're gonna change some of these channels, and we need to add some channels. So ailerons, pretty straightforward. I did nothing here. I'm moving my right stick, left stick. You can't see my stick right now, but I'm moving the cyclic stick left and right, and it's moving appropriately. I'm not changing anything there. Elevators, I'm going forward elevator and back elevator. Nothing to do there. Next thing I'm gonna do is pitch down here, which is our collective stick. Your source is throttle, and that's correct, but we need to change that channel 6 to channel 5. So select pitch and then select edit. So pitch always on. That's what we want. Input throttle. Yep, that's what we want. We're not doing any curves, and I need to change output 1 to channel 5, and it's going to say, do you want to swap channel 6 and channel 5's channel settings? I'm going to select yes. Okay, so basically there's my collective stick off of channel 5. So it's important all these channels are in the right order, otherwise you're going to get conflicts with the RF007. I'm going to go back to the model or the mixes page. And we're going to add a free mix. So to add a free mix, we're going to hit that plus symbol up here. And I'm going to select free mix. And I'm going to select last position. It doesn't really matter, but then all my channels will be in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I have 9 channels. And basically, we need to assign a free mix to our arming switch. Rotorflight needs an arming switch, and it can be a 2-position switch or a 3-position switch. I want this switch here to be my arming switch. I also want, when the switch is down, I want the RF007 disarmed. When I move the switch up, that's when I want it armed. So it's basically almost like a safety switch, okay? So down is off for me. And so now we're gonna rename this free mix to ARM. So I'm just gonna manually type in ARM and enter. And as far as the source, I want to assign it to this switch here. So all you have to do is move the switch, and it automatically detected the switch. Whoops. It automatically detected the switch. I named the switch earlier last year to flaps because I use this same switch here for flaps on my airplanes. I can't remember the exact name of the switch. You can look at your Ethos manual in GitHub and find out the name. But all you have to do is select source and then move the switch that you want, and it auto detects it. And then I'll click outside the field range here. So I have name ARM, active condition always on, and flaps is my source. Flaps is what I named this switch last year. Now, since when the switch is down, I want it disarmed, I had to reverse my channel down there. And I only discovered that later when I got in the Rotorflight configurator when I was bench testing. All right, let's go back to the mixes page. Oh, we have to go back to ARM. ARM, always on, flap switch or whatever switch you want. And then output 1 down here. We need to change that to channel 6. That's super important. The channel doesn't have a name. Do you want to copy the mix's name to the channel? Sure, it doesn't matter. I selected yes. Let's go back to the mixes page. And now I'm going to edit the bank switch. So I selected bank. I'm going to edit that. It's labeled bank. Rotorflight doesn't use the terminology bank. They use the terminology or lingo to profile. I have 3 profiles for my helicopters on Rotorflight. So I'm just going to change this name to profile, but you could leave it at bank if you want, not a big deal. But I'm changing mine to profile. Enter. Okay, active condition. Is always on. Input. This is where you're going to move the switch that you want for your bank switch. I use this switch here. So all I do is move it. And then you can see my transmitter auto detected the switch I moved. It's called the flight mode switch. That's what I renamed it last year. It may be called something different on your transmitter if it's new. So it just auto detected it. So that's the input. I don't need to do anything with curve. Channels count 1. Weight 100% is fine. Output 1 is correct. Channel 7. That's what we want our profile or bank switch. We want it on channel 7 so it communicates with Rotorflight correctly. Let's go to the mixes page again. And I'm actually going to move this arm channel up above the 7 just so it's in order, just because I'm OCD. So I selected it, I'm going to click move, hit the up arrow, and there we go. So we have channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 so far. We still have to add a couple more. Now, if you want rescue, and this is optional, but I selected rescue. I activated rescue, and so we need to add a name and a channel for rescue here. And basically, it needs to be on channel 8. So there's no rescue on here, so we're going to select the plus symbol, free mix. I'm going to select add after last position. I'm going to rename it rescue. Enter. Active condition always on. Source. This is where you want a momentary switch or a push button. It needs to be a momentary switch or push button in order to use rescue. So I used this back switch here. So right now it's away from me, so that will be rescue off. When I pull the switch towards me, I want rescue on. So I'm going to pull the switch towards me. You can see it auto detected, switch SH. And then this is important, keep on holding that momentary switch and then click outside the field. And then you can release that momentary switch or push button. Let me just get this transmitter figured out here with my stand. There we go. Okay, so we have rescue always on, source SH, which is that back right button. When I pull it towards me, that'll activate rescue. And you can kind of see the red line. Let me just move it, there's a little bit of glare. Operation add, that's fine, we're not doing any curves. Reverse, I have off, and then we need to assign rescue to a channel. And I'm going to select channel 8. The channel doesn't have a name. Do you want to copy the mix's name to the channel? I'm going to select yes. Okay, so now we have our rescue switch set up and channel. Let me just tilt this a little bit so we can see it easier. Let's go back to free mix. All right, I mentioned before, Rotorflight has the Blackbox feature. Blackbox on Rotorflight with a FrSKY radio needs to be on channel 9. I use Blackbox, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add a Blackbox channel. Although it's not required, you can still fly Rotorflight just fine without Blackbox. It just helps with tuning. So I'm going to hit the plus symbol because we need to add another free mix. Select free mix. I'm going to select add after last position, and I'm going to rename it the name to Blackbox. All right, source, or I'm sorry, active, I'm going to select enter because I just renamed it to Blackbox. Active condition always on, source. And this is where you can assign it to a 3-position switch. I assigned Blackbox to this switch right here. So when the switch is towards me, I want logging off. When the switch is in the middle, I want logging on. And when the switch is all the way forward, away from me, that's erase your logs. Okay, so I selected source, and then I'm just going to move this 3-position switch I want. So that's switch SA. Okay, and then I'm going to click outside the field, source SA, operation add, and then I reversed my channel because when this switch is towards me, whenever a switch is towards me, I want it off, like throttle hold or our arm switch that we did earlier. If it's towards me, I want it off. If it's away from me, I want something on. So I reversed that channel, which I discovered later in the Rotorflight configurator. So maybe this will save you time. Okay, so we just did our Blackbox. I'm going to select free mix. Like I mentioned, if you have a backup guard, like a buffer pack, you could add another free mix. And then you can assign it to a 2-position or 3-position switch. And that would be, oh, look here. We could see Blackbox name, channels, none. So we skipped a step. So let's go back to Blackbox, edit. So Blackbox on Rotorflight with the FrSKY radio needs to be channel 9. And then I'll just select yes here, doesn't matter. Okay, so we have channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was just mentioning if you have a backup guard, you could add another free mix. My backup guards just have a little push button on the backup guard buffer pack to turn it off, which I don't mind doing. So I'm going to skip that step. But if you want to add a free mix for your backup guard to turn it on and off, you could do that right now. Okay, one thing we need to do here is throttle. You can see on that graph on the right, when I move the collective stick up and down, it's controlling our throttle. Well, most of us don't fly our helicopters with the collective stick controlling throttle. Rotorflight basically needs -100% for off and 100% for full on. That's all it really cares about, okay? I set mine up for auto bailout, okay? So I'll show you what I did here if you want auto bailout. So we're gonna select throttle, and I'm gonna edit. Name, throttle, that's fine. And then input, you're gonna pick any 3-position switch you want. So I use this switch right here for if the switch is towards me, I want motor off -100. When the switch is in the middle, I want that to be auto bailout. and when the switch is all the way away from me, I want that motor on, which is 100%. So I'm going to select input, and I'm going to move the switch I want. I renamed the switch last year to throttle hold, so that's what came up automatically. So I'm going to select outside the field. So I got throttle, throttle hold, trim, default, low position trim I have off. I don't do anything with throttle cut or throttle hold. You don't need to do anything here. All right, so we do have to add a curve. So I'm going to select add a new curve, and then I'm going to select always on the drop down menu. So there's the curve, always on, and then I'm going to hit the drop down menu. And I'm going to select add. Okay, and this is where we're going to customize a throttle curve since I'm using auto bailout. So I'm just going to name this curve, and this will go in your curve menu. It'll save it. I'm just going to name this RF throttle curve. Okay, type. I'm going to select custom. Points count, I'm going to select 3. I don't want smooth on, I want easy mode on. Offset, we can leave at 0. Points. So there's our 3 points. Now we're going to alter these 3 points here. And I had to kind of, you may have to play around with this, but point 1, I'm going to select it to 100%. So I'm just using my thumb wheel. It's taking a while. Actually, I'm going to hit these 3 dots here and maybe go to max. Oh, there we go. That's easier. So point 1, I have 100%. And I'm going to select the middle of my scroll wheel, thumb wheel on the right. Now point 2. This is where you may have to play around later in your Rotorflight configurator. I adjusted point 2 so when I was in the middle position on my throttle hold switch, which is auto bailout, the motor is just barely turning. So I selected this to minus 62%, but you may have to play around with this. All right, finally, sorry about that. There's the minus 62%. All right, then point 3, let me just go to minimum. Select the 3 dots. I'm going to select minimum. All right, so there's our 3 points, 100%, minus 62, and minus 100%. So position 1. So I'm going to move my throttle hold switch. We can see that's showing minus 100. There's auto bailout, minus 62%. And then there's 100%. Okay, let's go back to curve. And now we're back in the throttle mixes page. And there, that's, we basically just set up motor on, motor off, and then auto bailout. Okay, so we're back to our mixes page. Now, if you don't want auto bailout, there is a way to do that. So you could just select any 2-position switch or 3-position switch, and it should work. So if you don't want auto bailout, you just skip that last step we talked about. You're going to edit your throttle. Input. Well, you're going to rename it to throttle, or actually it was already named throttle. You're going to select input, and then you're going to scroll down to special. Where's special? There it is. It's at the very bottom. You're going to select special, and then select maximum. Maximum. So it would be name throttle, input maximum, and it defaulted to channel 3. And you wouldn't have a curve. Okay, we only added the curve earlier because we were using auto bailout. Okay? But I'm going to change it back to the auto bailout switch, throttle hold switch right here. So I'm just going to move that switch. There we go. So we're back to where we were originally. So that's how you set up a switch, 2-position or 3-position, if you don't want auto bailout. All right, so here's all the channels. Ailerons channel 1, elevators channel 2, throttle channel 3, and the throttle's based off of this switch, the curve we made. We can see it right there. Rudders channel 4, pitch channel 5, arm channel 6, for a flap switch or whatever you want to name this switch. Profile, that's this switch here, channel 7. Rescue is channel 8, this back switch here, and then Blackbox channel 9, and I use that switch for Blackbox. Okay, so everything's ordered now. So let's go back to the model menu, select mixes, and then let's go to outputs here, and we'll see if everything we did just worked. All right, so ailerons. I'm going to move my ailerons. Okay, they're being displayed. Elevator, forward elevator, back elevator. Throttle, well, my throttle is based off a 3-position switch, not here. See, the throttle's not moving. So this switch is towards me, so that's minus 100%. That tells the Rotorflight configurator to turn your motor off. Middle position, minus 62%. That's your auto bailout. Like I said, you may have to alter that percentage in that curve you set up. And then when the switch is all the way away from me, that's max blast 100%. So that's working. Rudder, let me move the rudder stick. Left, right. Pitch. Pitch is off the collective, or they call it the throttle stick. There's 100%, minus 100%. Arm switch. Arm switch, I set it up. This is disarmed, which is a minus 100. Middle position, 0%. And this is arming the RF007. So then you could get out of throttle hold, go to motor on, and take off, okay? The arming switch doesn't have to be, it can be on a 2-position switch. I just put it on this 3-position switch and it works fine. Bank. This is the switch I selected for bank. So let me go back to the mixes page. So that's bank 3, 100%, or profile. I renamed it profile. So bank 3, 100%, bank 2, 0%, bank 1 is minus 100%. So that's showing good. Okay, let's test rescue out. We don't need a tap on it. So there's rescue. This is the switch I assigned to rescue. I'm going to pull it towards me. So the rescue off is minus 100. Now I'm going to pull it towards me, and it's showing 100%. Okay, let's go to the next page. And I want to test the output on Blackbox. So I set this switch for Blackbox, and I did reverse that channel, if you remember, in the mixes page when we set up the free mix. So towards me, minus 100%, that's logging off. Middle position, 0% is logging on. And then switch all the way away from me, that's positive 100%, that's eraser logs. Okay, and then if you did a set up a switch for your buffer pack, you could test it here. So minus 100 would be buffer pack off, and then 100% would be your buffer pack on. Let's go back to outputs. Timers, you could set up a timer here if you want. I'll show you how to do battery consumption later through the widget. That will be our home screen. Trims. This is just something added I do. I basically disable rudder, elevator, throttle, and aileron trim for an electric model. Okay? So I'm going to select step. I don't want to accidentally hit the rudder trim switch in flight, and then now the helicopter is yawing uncommanded. So select step, and I'm going to disable rudder trim. I'm going to go to elevator, and you're going to select step, and you're going to you can disable elevator trim if you want. My electric models, I disable throttle trim, so I'm going to select step, disable. Aileron trim, I want to disable that, select step, and then disable. Everything else is fine down here in trims. Okay, so we just finished off with disabling trims if you want to, not necessary. Now, for the fun part, we're going to register the RF007 to our transmitter and then bind it to our transmitter. FrSKY is a little different. It's a two-step process. When you get a new unit, you need to register it, and then we need to bind it. So let's select RF system. That's my owner registration ID, not a big deal. You'll have your own unique ID. I'm not using an external module, so I'm not selecting that. I'm going to select internal module. You need to select it on, okay? Protocol. I have the red RF007, which has the twin receiver in it, and my transmitter is capable of twin mode, so I'm going to select twin mode. Model ID, not a big deal. You can change it if you want. Channel range, I have channels 1 through 16. Now, if you're using 8 channels or less, you could change that to, that's not letting me do it right now. You could change it to 8 channels, and then you have smaller packets, smaller packets, so your latency may be a little better. But since I added a Blackbox to my channels, that put me at 9 channels. So I need channels 1 through 16. But if you're only using 8 or less channels, go ahead and change that to channels 1 to channel 8 here. And then you may have a little faster latency. Racing mode I don't touch. Uh, 900 megahertz. I'm selecting that off because the twin receivers don't have 900 megahertz receiver in it. 2.4 G LoRa, that's already selected to on. Antenna internal, and then power. You could select 100 milliwatts or 25 milliwatts. I select 25 milliwatts. The 2.4 G LoRa is your long range 2.4 transmission. Okay, now it's time to register. So what we want to do is, I use a little toothpick, and we see right there it says RX, and then there's a recessed hole. There's a button in that hole. So basically you want to use your toothpick or whatever little pointy object you have, and you're going to depress that button, and while depressing it, you're going to power on the RF007. You could use a 2S battery, or you could just plug in the USB cord that's probably already handy. So let me just demonstrate that right now. I'm going to go ahead and depress the little button in this recessed hole. All right, and then I'm going to plug in my, it's kind of, there we go. And then I'm going to plug in my USB cord. So that's, should be putting it into the registration mode. Now we're back on, we're still on the RF system page, and I'm gonna select register.
Register.
And there it is. There's my registration ID. The receiver name is the TWR6FB.
Register.
And I'm gonna select register. Registration okay. All right, so it's a two-step process as I mentioned before. So let's go ahead and unplug your RF007, whether you used a 2S battery or your USB cable on your computer. And then we're going to select receiver 1.
Find.
It says waiting for receiver. And then I'm going to plug in my USB cord back into the RF007.
Find.
And we could see the receiver popped up, TWR6FB. Bind OK. Right on. So now let's select that receiver we just bound, and we're going to select options. Telemetry we want on. Reduce telemetry power. It defaults to off. If you have glitchy servos, you may try turning that on, and it may fix the glitchy servos. High PWM speed, I want that on. I got fast servos. Telemetry port F bus. And then S bus, I want it on channels 16. Let's go back to receiver settings. Fail safe. I just selected to hold. This is where we do our range check, and you can do that after you got your model completely set up. Here's our external module, which I don't have, so I have it selected off. Let's go back to RF system. Okay, so we just registered and bound our RF007. And then I'm going to go to the next page in the model menu. Telemetry. While we're here, we might as well discover new sensors and then turn it off. Competition is off, Bluetooth is off, individual RSSI alert per band. This will give you warnings in flight if you're getting RSSI critical warnings or frame losses. All right, so here's all the telemetry coming from your RF007 so far. You see the flashing white dots, that means they're active, it's getting telemetry. Okay, and we're gonna get back to this telemetry page later when we activate more telemetry features in Rotorflight. Checklist, I don't do. Logic switches, I don't do. Special functions, this is where you can assign voices to your switches to remind you of what switch does what and what position does what. Curves, there's that custom curve we created earlier for throttle. If you use auto bailout, this is the curve you're probably going to see. So that's what my curve looks like. VARs, I don't use. Trainer,
I don't use unless I'm buddy boxing my son. Okay, we have a Lua app here. Let's click on that. And you want to click on Rotorflight background on. And that's it. We just set up a model. Okay, now it's time to update the receiver, whether it's Twin or Archer Plus, in our Vantac unit here. And we did that earlier. We downloaded that receiver firmware from the Ethos suite downloads page. And then we manually put it onto our radio in the flash drive D. So now we're going to update the firmware on this unit to the latest firmware. It may already have the latest firmware, but we'll see. So I'm going to go back to Model. I'm going to go to System. I'm going to zoom in here or focus. I'm going to select File Manager. That firmware, we put it on the flash drive. So select Flash. And then there's that firmware folder we created. Double click on that. I have a bunch of receivers on some airplanes, so I'm just going to scroll down till I see TWR6FB 3.0.2, and it's right down here. Okay. And then you're going to click, and if you have Archer Plus, it would say Archer Plus R6FB. So let's select the firmware you want, and we're going to flash the receiver by the internal over the air. OTA means over the air. So first step, make sure your RF007.
LoRa RSSI critical warning. 2 GB telemetry loss. LoRa telemetry loss.
Make sure you unplug your RF007. And then we're going to flash receiver by internal over the air.
Find.
It says waiting for receiver. Now we can plug it in. Select device came up. It recognized it.
Find.
Current version's 3.0.2. I'm going to select yes. And it looks like I already had the most recent version, but we'll flash it anyways. And it'll take, I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, it says success right there, so we can close that out. All right, next we're gonna open up the Rotorflight Configurator and start adjusting settings in there. We can now plug in the RF007 back into our computer with the USB cable.
2 GB telemetry recovered.
And you
LoRa telemetry recovered.
And I'd recommend also turning your transmitter on. That's fine. It should connect up with your RF007. And you can see the dB readings or reception readings up on the upper right corner.
I'll just show you real quick. So right up here, we can see we got 2.4G connected, and then our 2.4 LoRa is connected. So we're all connected up to the RF007 since it's powered through the computer. And we're gonna open up Rotorflight Configurator now. And we're gonna set up Rotorflight so it's in line with the channels we set on our radio earlier in the mixes page. All right, so I'm gonna connect up. Upper right corner, connect. All right, I'm connected. Let's see, we're on the status page right now. There's really nothing to do here. You can see if you move the RF007, the model on the screen moves as well. Okay, this is where we can test to make sure that you set the mixes correctly in your FrSKY radio, okay? Here on the right. So I'm gonna get my transmitter out, and I'm gonna give right roll, and we can see roll, the roll bars moving on in the configurator. Next, I'm gonna give it pitch, forward elevator, back elevator. So the pitch is moving. Yaw, there's left, there's right. Collective, full collective, and here's full negative collective. Throttle. Remember, I set throttle off my 3-position switch up here. When the switch is towards me, it's off. So throttle is off at 987. That's my auto bailout middle, which is right around 10.3%. Like I said, you're gonna have to play with this when you start setting up your helicopter. And then when the throttle hold switch is all the way away from me, that's full 100%. So I can see my 3-position throttle switch is working. All right, aux 1 is my profile switch or bank switch. So this is bank 1, 987, bank 2 in the middle, bank 3 or profile 3, 2011. That checks out. Okay, now I'm gonna move my, this is my Blackbox logging. So all the way towards me is Blackbox logging off. And this is aux 4 for Blackbox. So this is Blackbox on, and all the way away from me is erase logs. Okay, that tests out. What else do we need to test? Oh, rescue. That's on my momentary switch back here. So I'm gonna pull the switch towards me for rescue, and we can see aux 3 is going to 2011. So that's rescue on. Let's see, oh, the arming switch. So it's either a 2-position or 3-position switch. I have it on a 3-position switch, it doesn't matter. So right now, the switch is back towards me, so that's disarmed. Middle position, doesn't do anything, but it goes to 1500 here. All the way away from me is 2011 on aux 1, and that is arming the RF007, okay? So make sure everything works in the proper directions. If they don't, you may want to reverse that channel in your mixers page, okay? All right, I'm gonna set my transmitter aside. I'll just leave it on for now, it's not a big deal. We're gonna go through the rest of these Rotorflight tabs. You basically work from the top down, how you set these up. So nothing else to do on this page. All we wanna do is check that everything's moving the right way. Setup, we already calibrated our accelerometer. Configuration, okay, this is where we can name your helicopter, so I'm just gonna name it OMP M7. Gyro update, and I'm gonna hit enter. Gyro update frequency defaults to 4. PID loop frequency, and we have these nice question marks on the side that kind of gives you a basic rundown of what that parameter is. My other model's on 2 kilohertz, so I'm just gonna set that, and it seems to be working fine. I have accelerometer on, and the RF007 has a barometer in it, so I just selected that on. All these can be off. Okay, so if you have telemetry from your ESC, we can see there's a telemetry port on our RF007. It says TLM. Your ESC telemetry is going to be plugged in there, okay? And all you need is the signal wire. You don't need the ground or the positive, okay? Signal wire is just fine. So telemetry, you're going to select that to ESC telemetry, and it goes to auto. And then the internal receiver, which is the receiver in the RF007, says serial receiver and auto, okay? Now, if the cables are facing towards the tail of the helicopter, you need to change your yaw to 180, okay? But if your cables out of the RF007 are facing towards the nose of the helicopter, you can leave it at 0. Mag alignment default, I don't touch these trims here. Okay, we're done with the configuration page. Presets. Oh, I forgot to mention, anytime you change anything on any of these pages, we have to save and reboot. It's kind of, I've made plenty of mistakes where I've made changes and I don't save, and then I wind up not seeing any changes. So save and reboot anytime you make a change in the Rotorflight configurator. All right, where were we? Okay, so we saved what we just did on the configuration page. Presets, I don't do anything here. But this is where you can load presets if you got a buddy or you found a nice preset through the Discord group. All right, receiver. Make sure this is on FrSKY F bus. Inverted signaling on, and one wire communication is on. I had this selected off. Okay. Bert Cameron's video goes over all these things here. And there's also, and I'll have a link for that video. And then there's another video on how to set your ESC up and your motor up in the configurator, okay? And they kind of go over what you need to set here, but I'm gonna skip that for now. All right, telemetry settings. We're gonna get that on. And then you're gonna go through all these different telemetries and select what you want, what's important, what you need. The caveat is you can only have 40 selections. So for now, I'm just gonna select battery voltage, battery current, battery consumption, battery charge level, battery cell count, battery cell voltage, battery cell voltages, voltage, ESC voltage. I want BEC voltage, bus voltage. I don't care about, but you could always get it on. Current, I want ESC current. I guess you could have BEC current, as a warning. You could set up a warning, if you're overamping the BEC.
Prolonged inactivity.
That's my transmitter yelling at me. ESC temperature is nice to know, so I'll get that on. BEC temperature, I don't think my HobbyWing version 5 has BEC temperature. MCU temperature, I don't care about. All right, ESC number 1. I'm gonna select ESC voltage, ESC current, ESC capacity, RPM, ESC power, throttle, and temp 1. I also want BEC voltage. I guess we could get BEC current on. ESC status and ESC model, I don't really care about. I don't have ESC2. RPM, you could get head speed on. You could also get tail speed if you want. I'll just keep it off for now. Barometer, I don't really care about, but you could get your altitude. And then your FrSKY radio will have altitude telemetry. Gyro, I don't really care about heading, but attitude and the accelerometers I'll select on. There's not much documentation on what to set here. It's kind of a work in progress. GPS I don't have.
status. I don't care about model ID. Flight mode, yeah. Arming flags, yes. Arming disable flags. Rescue state. Governor state. Adjustment function. Profiles. You definitely want these selected on so you can adjust profiles and get telemetry. Control, I'm going to select pitch, roll, yaw, collective throttle, and then system. I don't really care about any of this. Okay, I'm going to save and reboot. All right, so we just enabled a bunch of telemetry in RF007, but our transmitter hasn't discovered those new sensors. So we'll go to model, we'll go to the next page, and then we have the telemetry icon here, and then I'm going to discover new sensors, and then turn it off. And now let's scroll down with the thumb wheel. There's our consumption, cell counts, pitch control, roll control. So there's a ton of new telemetry readouts we're getting on our radio, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so anytime you change anything in that telemetry menu, where was it? Anytime you change, you want to deselect something or add something, discover new sensors again through your transmitter, okay? Fail safe. Let me make sure I got, back to the receiver tab. So we started at the top here, and then we finished up down here. And then we want to make sure this is the right channel order so it matches up with our FrSKY mixes, all those channels we set up. And it should be AETRC123. Okay, so that matches up with the mixes page, which is super important. Fail safe, I just left it to default. Power, this is where you can select ESC telemetry if you have it, and then you can select, you can change these parameters here. This is where you're going to set your battery capacity and your battery cell count. I didn't do anything over here, I just left it to default. Motors, I didn't make any changes on this page, so I'm going to ignore changes. So now we're on the motors tab. ESC throttle protocol, PWM. ESC telemetry protocol, if you're using a HobbyWing Platinum 5, you can select that. But it has all your different manufacturers of ESCs, so select whatever you have there. And then you may have to play around with these tabs here. And like I said, a lot of this stuff, let me go back to the motors tab, it's reconnecting. A lot of this stuff here, you're gonna be setting up through Bert's video or any other video you can find on Rotorflight setup as far as setting up your helicopter specifically. Servos, while you're here, you might as well as change your frequencies. So Servo 1 is your rear your elevator servo. Servo 2 is your left aileron servo. This is your right aileron servo, and Servo 4 is your tail servo. So you could change your frequencies here. So my cyclic servos 1, 2, 3, they're going to be 333 hertz, but my tail servo is going to be 500 hertz. So you want to make sure those frequencies are selected appropriate to what kind of servos you have before you actually connect your servo to your RF007. The center, this is where you're going to 90 your servos, right here. This is where you're also going to reverse. If one servo is moving the wrong way, you're going to reverse it here. And I select geometry correction for servos 1, 2, and 3, but I don't for the tail servo. I'll save changes. All right, we're on the servos. Tab here, mixer. This is where Bert's video goes over all these settings on how to set up your main rotor and your tail rotor. Gyro, this is where you're going to enable filters. Rates, this is where I have 3 profiles. So each profile, you're going to change your rates. And Bert's video has a great explanation on that. Profiles. So profile 1, 2, and 3 is what I have. I only have 3 profiles. This is where these are the default PIDs, proportional, integral, and derivative. Bert's video has a great explanation on that. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of Rotorflight. This is where the profiles page, this is how you're going to tune your helicopter if you got bobbles or shaking or tail whipping, stuff like that. Modes, I'm going to put a CLI file
Prolonged inactivity.
in the show notes on the video, the YouTube video, on how I set my modes and my adjustments. Beepers, I didn't do anything here. Sensors, there's really nothing to look at here. Blackbox, you can make changes here. And there's some videos on setting up Blackbox. CLI, this is where you're gonna save settings. And the Rotorflight
Sensor
website,
loss.
the Rotorflight website,
Sensor loss.
the Rotorflight website has a good explanation on how to save your settings, you know, if you have to do a firmware update on your Rotorflight. And then if you do an update on your Rotorflight, your RF007, it erases everything on it. So if you saved a file, then you can easily reload the file here. So when they're talking about CLI, this is the CLI. And to get out of the CLI, you have to type exit. So I'm going to type exit. Now we're out of the CLI program. So you can leave the RF007 or disconnect it through the Rotorflight configurator, but leave the RF007 plugged into your computer. And then you can leave your transmitter on. So I'm still connected to the RF007, as you can see here. I have some dB readings on the upper right hand corner. One cool thing is when you transferred those Lua into those Luas in the script files, there's a custom home screen. Right now, this is the FrSKY default home screen. So I want to change this screen to the Rotorflight home screen, which is really nice. Okay, so I'm gonna select screen, the little plus symbol down there that takes us to the configure screens. And I'm gonna click on screen 1, and I wanna change the layout. And I'm gonna scroll down here, and you wanna pick the full screen image here. Okay, and then select configure, and then the widget line, select bitmap, and then we're gonna scroll all the way down to Rotorflight status. So this is how we're gonna set up our Rotorflight home screen. Title on, triggers. I select idle switch always on, so I get battery warnings no matter what profile I'm in. Delay before active, I just left it at 10 seconds. Timer configuration, this is where you can set timers. If you want a timer alarm, I use milliamp consumption to tell me when to land, so I don't use timers. Battery configuration, This is where you're going to put, you know, how many cells you have, max cell voltage, warning cell voltage, low fuel percent. So I set that to like 25 or 30. So when I'm flying and I hear battery 0%, or it'll tell me battery 25% or 30%, whatever number I set there, it'll give me a warning when I'm at that level, and then that's my indication when I need to land. And you want to play the alert if you want to use milliamps consumed in order to land. I select low fuel. That's when you'll get the warning to land. Interval, I usually set that at 15 seconds because it's annoying if it's going off every 5 seconds. I like vibration on, just so my transmitter will vibrate because it has that feature. Switch announcements, you can play through here. A lot of the stuff I don't like. Rescue on, rescue off, you could set that. So this is my rescue on. And then I'm going to release the switch, and then rescue off. I'm going to move the switch towards me and then release it. So now I'll get an audio voice for rescue on or rescue off. Blackbox logging on or off, I don't really care about that. I actually do set it up and then just set it up off of what switch you want, which switch you set up for Blackbox earlier. Telemetry announcements. The only thing I did here is fuel. You can do anything you want here, but all I did was fuel. And then I have momentary push button on the back of my transmitter. So if I want to know what my fuel is, so I'm going to push that button on the back of my transmitter, keep it pushed, tap outside the field. Now, anytime I push that button, you can see it gets bold. It'll tell me how much fuel I have, 80%, 50%, 40%. Like I said earlier, I usually set 25% or 30% to land. You're also going to get audio for that. All these other things I don't care about. Governor adjustments, you can play with that. I just left it to default. Customized display I didn't play with, and advanced I didn't play with. All right, so we're done setting up that home screen. So let's see what it looks like. I'm gonna hit return a bunch of times.
Rescue mode off.
Cool. We just set that rescue mode earlier in that configure widget screen. So here's our custom Rotorflight home screen that we just set up. So we have voltage, fuel remaining, RPM, current. We can change that to max current if you want, because I don't really care about what my current is. I just like to know what my max current is after I land. There's a way to do that. There's all kinds of things we can change. So many different features. It's a powerful system. All right, thank you for watching this video on how to set up your FrSKY radio and the Vantac RF007. I hope it helps out. I just don't want people to make the same mistakes I made, and I had to do a lot of digging around to get this working correctly. Like I said in the at the bottom of the YouTube video, in the notes or comments, look, I'm gonna have a bunch of links, manuals, and some links to some great YouTube videos out there that will set you up for success. All right, thanks for watching. Take care now. See you at the field.